Joran Vander Sloot. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Crue Trime, Crue Trime, Crue Trime, Crue Trime, Crue Trime, Crue Trime, Crue Trime. My name is Sarah, and what I do here is tell you a terrible story to ruin your day and put on my makeup at the same time. So if that sounds like fun to you, you're in the right place. So make sure you subscribe to this channel and then turn on the notifications so then that way you will never miss one of my terrible stories. So today we are covering one of the most infuriating cases in Crue Trime history. And the criminal has one of the most punchable faces ever. Y'all, this guy is like if red flags were a person. If you Googled gaslighting sociopath with the personality of a dried white dog turd, his face would pop up. And the worst part, he almost got away with it. But karma, my friends, is a patient queen. So let's get into it. This is the story of Natalee Holloway. Natalee Ann Holloway was born on October 21st, 1986 in Memphis, Tennessee to Dave and Beth Holloway. She was the oldest of two kids. She had a younger brother named Matthew, and they were living in Clinton, Mississippi. In 1993, when Natalee was just a young girl, her parents divorced, and Beth later remarried to George Jug Twitty. Jug was very successful in the insurance business, specifically investments and financial services. After Beth and Jug got married, the family moved to Mountain Brook, Alabama, which is an affluent suburb of Birmingham. So despite having divorced and living in different cities, Dave and Beth were very actively involved in their kids' lives. Natalee and Beth were incredibly close, and little brother Matthew looked up to his big sister. This family was super tight, you know, loving, supportive, all the things. So the Holloway kids were being raised to be good, kind citizens. You know, respect others, work hard, do good in school, be nice. And yeah, the family was very financially well off, but Natalee and Matthew were not spoiled brats. Natalee was a bright, ambitious, well-loved young lady who loved anything to do with the Wizard of Oz. She was an excellent student and was very involved in extracurricular activities. Natalee attended Mountain Brook High School, which is one of the top high schools in Alabama. As I mentioned, she was a very dedicated student, and she had an excellent GPA and had earned a full ride scholarship to the University of Alabama, where she intended to study pre-med and become a doctor.
Roll Tide.
Natalee was a member of the National Honor Society. She was on the dance team. This girl was motivated, okay? Her high school years were full of promise, and she worked hard, she enjoyed life, she had big dreams ahead of her. Natalee also had a very close group of girlfriends, and though she was very adventurous and essentially up for anything, she was level-headed. She was known in the group to be the responsible one. Essentially, she wasn't somebody who took risks. So in the late spring of 2005, the now 18-year-old Natalee had just graduated with honors from Mountain Brook High School and was heading to Aruba to celebrate. Now, Aruba seems like a very elaborate, ostentatious graduation gift, but this was like a tradition at the high school. This wasn't some like girls gone wild, spoiled brat bullshit. This was like a school sanctioned event. There was 124 other students from the school going on this trip. There were 7 chaperones included, and they were going to enjoy a 4-day, 5-night vacation filled with beaches, sightseeing, and nightlife. So her dad and mom would both later say that the trip kind of made them nervous. But they did trust that Natalee, being so responsible, would be fine. Beth was worried about this extra freedom that Aruba was going to bring to the kids because the legal age for drinking alcohol in Aruba is 18. And Aruba had a reputation for not really enforcing the drinking laws. And these lax drinking laws kind of meant that the kids are going to have total free reign, total access unlimited to alcohol. But with so many other kids on the trip, Beth was assured that it would be okay, and again, she trusted Natalee's judgment. So on Thursday, May 26th, 2005, the group of high school kids arrived in Aruba and they checked into the Holiday Inn Resort near Palm Beach, which was a popular tourist area on the island, like an all-inclusive type of a place. The students spent their time enjoying the beaches, local attractions, water sports, blah, 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 before their scheduled departure on Monday, May 30th, 2005, which is a flight that Natalee never boarded. but we'll come back to that. All right, so the kids are at this all-inclusive resort. They're soaking up the sun. They're snorkeling. They're going out on catamarans and boat rides and just having the best time. Natalee was there with her 3 best friends, Liz Kane, Mally Tucker, and Claire Fearman. Anyways, the girls would wake up, brush teeth, and then go straight to the beach. Claire said that they would stay in the water all day long because it was so perfect. When the sun went down, the kids would get all dressed up, go to dinner, and then flock to the nightclubs. And they favored one in particular called Carlos and Charlie's. It's a super popular spot, especially for young American spring breakers.
Carlos and Charlie!
And we now know that the normally very responsible Natalee was partying her face off in Aruba. She drank a lot, although her friends said that she could handle it. You know, she wasn't sloppy or messy. She would start the day off with a little hair of the dog. You know what I'm saying? Cocktails for breakfast.
Did someone say beveragino?
She would drink most of the day and she partied all night.
Did someone say beveragino?
But you know what? It wasn't anything that all the other kids weren't doing too. They were just having fun. These kids were whooping it up.
Let's whoop it the hell up.
So on their last night in Aruba, May 29th, 2005, Natalee and the girls went to dinner at the poolside restaurant there at the resort, as they normally did, and then they went to the casino inside the hotel. It was here that the girls met 17-year-old Dutch student Joran van der Sloot and his 2 friends, 18-year-old Satish Kalpo and 21-year-old Deepak Kalpo. Brothers. Now, according to witnesses, Joran approached Natalee. I mean, who wouldn't? She's a total stunner. Look at her. We now know that this was something that Joran did often. He was living in Aruba. He was a student at the International School of Aruba, and he was a regular at these tourist traps on the island. So he had a very regular stream of pretty young girls to prey on. But anyways, Natalee and Joran were hitting it off, you know, having a good time, chatting, and then the group moved on to Carlos and Charlie's for some more drinking and dancing, yada yada. Now, Natalee was drunk. More than a couple of her classmates tried to get her to leave with them. You know, they knew that they had an early morning the next day. They were supposed to be flying home. But Natalee said she was fine and she wanted to stay and hang out. So now it's the end of the night and Joran offered to give Natalee a ride home, which she accepted. And she was seen by classmates willingly getting into a silver Honda Civic around 1:30 in the morning. We now know that that Honda Civic was owned by one of those brothers, the Kalpo brothers. Okay, so the students were supposed to be on the buses to leave this resort at 10 o'clock in the morning the next day, or technically like that day, just a few hours later. But when the time came, Natalee was nowhere to be found. Her passport, her luggage, her belongings were still in her hotel room, indicating that she never returned from the night before. Now, why didn't Natalee's friends notice that she didn't come home? And or why would they leave her alone with a stranger, you might ask? Well, all of them had been drinking heavily due to Aruba's relaxed alcohol enforcement laws. Also, on that last night in Aruba, Natalee had gone to the bar with other kids from the group while the girls stayed back at the hotel. Also, Natalee was independent and outgoing and the responsible one, you know? So her friends likely assumed that she was going to be fine, that she was going to make it back safely. Well, the people that she had gone out with noticed that she didn't come back with them. You know, everybody was kind of camped out in the hotel lobby, watching everyone come back in that night, and she didn't. So they immediately notified the local police that was sort of stationed at the hotel, and then they also told the chaperones, who called Natalee's mother, Beth, immediately. So her girlfriends just thought she was passed out on the beach. You know, they were more worried about how mad her mom was going to be about missing the flight than worried about something bad having happened to her. I mean, this was the furthest thing from their minds. It wasn't until they landed back in the US that the pieces started to come together. This was bad. So when Beth got the call that her daughter Natalee was missing, total panic. She spoke to the other students, Natalee's friends, that had last seen her with this boy, Joran. Then she chartered a private plane to Aruba like the badass mom that she is, and she went full Liam Neeson in Taken.
But what I do have are a very particular set of skills.
So after landing in Aruba, Beth and her husband Jug and some other close friends that had come with, they went straight to the Holiday Inn Resort. They spoke with the police and the staff that knew about Natalee. They reviewed the CCT, like the security camera footage. She gathered as much information as possible, and then within hours, Beth was standing at the gate outside of Joran van der Sloot's house in Aruba with the Aruban police demanding to speak with him. In her mind, she was thinking, is Natalee being held captive inside this house? I mean, if only she was. Joran addressed Beth and the authorities.
I'm Joran Greyjoy. I claim the Salt Throne.
Calmly lying to their faces. At first, he denied even knowing Natalee's name. But then he told some story about driving with Natalee out to the beach because she wanted to see sharks.
Sure, Jan.
But then he dropped her off at her hotel around 2 a.m, and he said that as he was driving away with the Calpo brothers, that a dark-skinned security guard approached her. Sir, what kind of flimsy blame the black guy excuse is this? Well, Beth and her team immediately went back to review that security footage. And guess what? Natalee never came back. And just like that, Joran's first story fell apart like a Temu swimsuit in a hot tub. Too real? So at this point, Beth wasn't just searching for Natalee. She was dragging Aruban authorities around by their collars. Beth was not messing around, okay? Mama bear, big time.
Skills that make me a nightmare for people like you.
You know, she wanted them to do something about it. Search teams were deployed, locals, volunteers, even tourists joined in. Helicopters scanned the island, search dogs combed the beaches, divers checked the ocean, private investigators were hired, all the things. And yet, nothing. No body, no clothing, no phone, no trace. Meanwhile, Joran and his 2 sidekicks, Deepak and Satish, they kept running their mouths and making things worse. They were saying, oh wait, actually, we left Natalee on the beach. She wanted to stay there alone. Sir, that's not how vacation works. Well, Beth refused to let this case go cold, and she began publicly pressuring Aruban officials to investigate Joran and the Calpo brothers. She held press conferences, she met with local officials, she kept pushing for their arrest. I mean, at this point, even the Aruban police are like, okay, this guy's lying through his teeth. And in Aruba, you can be arrested just to help facilitate investigation. So, on June 9th, 2005, they finally arrested Joran and the Calpo brothers. So for about 5 seconds, it looked like justice might actually happen, but it didn't. Because despite the fact that these guys were, full of shit, the police didn't have any physical evidence. And as we know, the justice system tends to get real weird about convicting people without concrete proof, even when somebody seems guilty as hell. The head of the investigation, Police Commissioner Jan van der Straten, it eventually changed. He said that Natalee wouldn't have had to walk through the hotel lobby to return to her room. So the lack of security footage wasn't necessarily evidence that she never came back. Which, okay, but also, well then, why didn't any of her friends see her or find her? Anyway, basically, they really needed more evidence. Meanwhile, all this is going on, and the police are really trying to follow every lead they have. And 2 former security guards from a nearby hotel were detained as suspects in Natalee's disappearance. And a reason has never officially been published, but it's likely that it's some lie that the Calpo brothers or Joran van der Snot came up with. To cover their tracks. The 2 security guards were later cleared, of course. Joran's father, Paulus, and another random guy were also arrested in connection with the case, but were later cleared. The Aruban authorities were really trying to solve the case, but it got really messy. And speaking of messy, Joran's story changed again. This time, he said that Natalee was acting weird and collapsed on the beach, and then he left her there, but then he had no idea what happened after that. Basically, this liar, pants on fire just kept changing the story. Anyways, after about a month in jail, the Calpo brothers were released. There just wasn't enough to hold them. Also, their story didn't match Joran's at all, his changing stories. And Joran, by this time, was trying to suggest that maybe they, the brothers, took Natalee back to their house.
Stop fucking lying.
Anyway, Joran sat in jail for about 2 months before he walked away, scot-free. Now, I didn't mention this earlier, but obviously Joran came from a very wealthy family in the Netherlands. Is that obvious? is obvious to me. Now, it was less that they were like billionaire level rich, but they were absolutely privileged and connected. Joran, who was 17 years old, regularly gambled in the casinos despite being underage. But because Aruba is a small island and everybody knew who his daddy was. His father, Paulus van der Sloot, was a high-ranking judge in training. Now, while they weren't lounging on private yachts with fuck you money, they were definitely upper middle class and were well connected in Aruba's legal system, which probably goes even further. Translation, when your daddy is tight with the people investigating you, your case gets mishandled really fast. Now, if I was Beth Twitty, this would have been my villain origin story. Instead, she does what she does best. She kept fighting. Beth dragged this case into the international spotlight, giving interviews, demanding action, and basically shaming the entire Aruban justice system into trying harder. Cash rewards were offered for Natalie's safe return. Over $200,000 at first, but then that eventually ballooned into $1 million. A separate reward was offered for information that would lead to the discovery of Natalie's remains. That was offered for upwards of $250,000. The search for Natalee continued all summer, and it went through the fall and the winter of 2005. They brought in planes with infrared sensors. They compared recent satellite imagery of maps to see if there were like soil disturbances. They searched sand dunes, landfills, you name it. Essentially, all the leads went nowhere. And Joran van der Sloot was just living his best life, doing everything he could to look terrible. And the Aruban police commissioner said some pretty not nice things about Natalee. You know, victim-blamey things, suggesting that she was high on drugs. And essentially, she overdosed or was just like asking for it, basically. Her family, of course, vehemently denied any such allegations, but it just was going nowhere. In March of 2006, Joran gave a televised interview where he described going to the beach with Natalee.
She asks me first, let's go to your house. When I go to your house, I want to see your house. I'm like, no. Yeah, we just drove around. We went up to the lighthouse. We made a circle there, went back.
He claimed that she wanted to do the sex, but he refused because he didn't have a condom.
He's a real gentleman. I bet he takes the dishes out of the sink before he pees in it.
He said that he actually left Natalee behind on the beach at about 3 o'clock in the morning when Satish had arrived to drive him home. I mean, how chivalrous. He said that he felt ashamed to have left a young girl alone on the beach. And he wasn't truthful about this version of the story at first because he was sure that she was going to turn up. Okay, Joran van der Sloot. You would think that with all this attention, negative attention, Joran would keep his head down. But no. He went on to become an international dumpster fire. In 2007, he co-published a book with a Dutch reporter that gave his perspective of the night that Natalee disappeared. This resulted in his Aruba home being searched, specifically the yard. They dug it up looking for her. They found nothing. In 2008, Joran was caught on a hidden camera telling an undercover reporter that Natalee died in his arms and that he and his friend dumped her body in the ocean. But when the authorities confronted him, he pulled up, just kidding. In another interview, Joran said that Natalee had been sold into sexual slavery and was taken to Venezuela. But was any of that enough to get this walking bag of hot garbage juice arrested? No. Natalee Holloway had essentially been wiped off the face of the earth, and Joran van der Sloot just went on living his life like nothing happened. He spent the next 5 years bebopping between the Netherlands, Aruba, and South America, creeping on tourists and slithering around in casinos. He was out there losing his daddy's money like it was his job. After Joran's father, Paulus, died of a heart attack in early 2010, the wheels started to come off. So Joran was always strapped for cash because he had a major gambling problem. He borrowed money constantly and he racked up debt playing poker in Aruba and everywhere else. In one of the lowest moves in Crue Trime history, Joran reached out to Beth Twitty, like the Holloway family, with an offer. So essentially, he told them that he knew where Natalee's remains were, where her body was. And if they wanted to know what he knew, they're going to have to pay him.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah. Oh yeah, he really did this. If Beth Twitty wasn't already plotting his downfall, she sure as hell was now. So Joran's brilliant plan, i.e. dumbest move of his life. He contacted John Q. Kelly, who was Beth Twitty's lawyer, saying that he would reveal the location of Natalee's remains for the low price of $250,000. He demanded $25,000 up front, and then the rest would be due when the body was discovered. In exchange, he promised to tell them everything, the real story of what happened. So Beth, of course, called the FBI. The FBI essentially set up a sting. On May 10th, 2010, they wired $25,000 cash dollars to Joran, and then they waited for him to lead them to Natalee's body. Guess what? Joran took the money and immediately fled to Peru. Surprise, surprise! Now, let's just pause for a second. If Joran had not pulled this stupid extortion stunt, he might have never been caught for anything. He could have continued living his shitbird, scummy life, manipulating people, avoiding prison, but because he could not resist being an opportunistic rat, he put himself right back in the FBI's crosshairs. And on June 3rd, Joran van der Sloot was charged in the U.S. District Court of Northern Alabama with extortion and wire fraud. U.S. Attorney Joyce White Vance obtained an arrest warrant and transmitted it to Interpol. On June 30th, van der Sloot was indicted on the charges, and it was officially game on, baby. Now, remember when I told you that karma was a patient queen? Hold on to your butts, y'all. So while on the run in Lima, Peru, Joran found himself in the casino at the Tag Hotel. He spotted a really pretty girl named Stephanie Flores, a college student from a wealthy family. Joran saw Stephanie winning money, and he decided to befriend her. So they gambled together. She won big. Joran, being an actual parasite, invited her back to his hotel room, and Stephanie, likely thinking that this was just a friendly post-casino hangout, went with him. Can you see where this is going? So at 5:33 a.m., security cameras captured Joran and Stephanie entering the room together. By 8:10 a.m., Joran was seen on the security footage leaving alone. In those 3 hours, Stephanie Flores was brutally beaten to death. So in Joran's eventual confession, which, let's be honest, he probably revised like 12 times, here's what happened. Stephanie saw something on Joran's laptop. Allegedly, he had files about the Natalee Holloway case open on the computer, and Stephanie might have confronted him about it, and Joran lost his temper and attacked her, punching her in the face, slamming her head against the wall, and then strangling her with his t-shirt. She fought back, but he overpowered her, and then he casually walked out like nothing happened. What was the date that this occurred, you ask? May 30th, 2010. 5 years to the date that Natalee Holloway disappeared. Joran fled the country, crossing into Chile like some kind of bargain bin Bond villain, and within days, authorities tracked him down, and he was arrested for first-degree murder and robbery, and he was extradited back to Peru faster than he could tell his next lie. Once he was in Peru, Joran cracked, and he confessed to murdering Stephanie Flores. And on January 22nd, 2012, he was sentenced to 28 years in the Chayapalca prison, which is one of the worst in Peru. In an interview from the prison, 23-year-old Joran van der Sloot reportedly admitted to this extortion plot with the Holloway family, saying, quote, "I wanted to get back at Natalee's family. Her parents have been making my life tough for 5 years. Joran, I'm gonna hold your hand when I say this. Oh, they got your ass. But wait, there's more. After nearly 2 decades of lying, dodging justice, and generally being the worst human alive, Joran van der Sloot was finally dragged into the United States in 2023 to face federal charges in Alabama for the extortion plot. The charges: wire fraud, because he got money via a bank transfer, and extortion, because he demanded $250,000 for fake information. And reminder, this scam, the extortion scam, happened just days before he murdered Stephanie Flores in Peru. So if Joran hadn't just run off and then killed another person, he might have just gotten away with it. Congrats, dumbass. You played yourself. Peru agreed to give up Joran under a temporary extradition deal, meaning he could stand trial in the United States, but after sentencing, they would send his ass right back to Peru to finish his sentence there. So the United States only had one chance to nail Joran in court before returning him to his Peruvian prison. On June 8th, 2023, the handcuffed, shackled, and probably very miserable Joran van der Sloot landed in Birmingham, Alabama, and pled not guilty to the wire fraud charges.
Just as I thought. Trash.
But after years of denial and taunting Natalee's family, Joran finally admitted the truth. On October 18th, 2023, the now 36-year-old Joran confessed via a proffer letter that he killed Natalee on the beach on that night in 2005. He said that she refused his sexual advances, she kneed him in the crotch, he got upset, he kicked her in the face, and then he picked up a cinder block on the beach and beat her head in, and then he dumped her body in the ocean. It was everything we already knew, but now it was real. And for Beth Twitty, this was the closest thing to justice that she was ever going to get, next to an actual confession. And in case you're wondering, yes, of course, Joran was found guilty of the wire fraud and extortion charges, and he was sentenced to 20 years in U.S. federal prison. And what that really means is that he's going to do 28 years in Peru, and then he'll immediately be brought to the United States for another 20 years. There's some conflicting information that the sentences are going to run concurrently. Oh no. Oh no. Consecutively. Joran van der Sloot will be 76 years old before he's eligible to leave prison, if he even lives that long. Beth Twitty won. Though she was declared legally dead on January 12th, 2012, nearly 7 years after she disappeared, Natalee Holloway's mother never gave up on the search for her daughter, and at the end of the day, Natalee Holloway's case is heartbreaking. Her family fought tirelessly for years, and even though it took nearly 2 decades, they finally got some closure. And that is the story of Natalee Holloway. I was reminded of this story because there's another case that's hot in the news right now. It sounds very similar. Girl on vacation, disappears on the beach, lies, lies, lies. Are you guys following that case? If there's a Crue Trime case that you want to recommend to me, just look down in the description box. There's a link to a Google Doc. You can click it, fill in all the dirty details. I would love to hear from you. If you want to know what makeup I used in today's look, then look down in the description box. Everything is linked. If I used something that is no longer available, I'll find you something similar. Thank you so much for hanging out today and for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you want to see more videos like this one, then consider subscribing to this channel before you leave today. I upload new videos here on YouTube every week, and you can follow me on all of the other socials as well. That is it for now. I will catch you next time in the next video. Bye! And motherfucker. Girls Gone Wild. Stephanie from... okay. So, boat rides. Scholarship to... Joran. Fuck. Joran. Did I say that right? Chayapalka? Chayapalka. Palka.